All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat.
And I'm Eric.
And today we are going to be talking about Dragon Quest XI. And we figured today this would be our non-spoiler discussion. But prior to getting into that, we are going to talk about some other games that we've been playing. And we're going to dive into the comments from last week. So that way you all have a full-length podcast to listen to, and then we're going to get into the full spoilerific episode hopefully next week, assuming nothing goes haywire with our schedules, etc. But Eric, what have you been playing this week?
Oh, you know what I've been playing. I've been playing Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Oh boy. How's that been for you? It's
been a great time. This is definitely the definitive Smash Bros. Package. You know, despite what Melee tournament people say, this is definitely the best Smash Bros. Without a doubt. I mean, it feels great. It feels like they ironed out a lot of things. Like, they made the game feel much faster without going, like, overdoing it. It feels much faster than Brawl and the Wii U version, Smash 4, people call it. And it's just been a great time. I've been taking this whole weekend to unlock all the characters, which I finally did. It was 74 characters.
And you unlocked all of them this weekend?
Yeah, most people have. It's basically how it works is every 10 minutes of gameplay, not just sitting on the timer, but actually playing the game for 10 minutes. Sure. A new recruit comes, and I just took that time. I did like 3 stock battles every time, and just practicing how the mechanics work and feel in the game. And I feel like I got a lot better for it, and I got all the characters at the same time. So It was pretty cool to do that. But besides that, it is a lot of what you expect in Smash Bros. It has a lot of rule sets to customize the way you want things, and it's got the classic mode also, which you can go through stages and the beat Master Hand at the end, the usual stuff like that. But they actually added something very interesting this time that is called the World of Light. And this is actually where the RPG, the RPG aspect of it comes in.
Okay.
The game, the story starts out that everyone gets turned into, I mean, it's not really a spoiler, everyone's seen it, but if not, you can tune it out right now.
Sure.
But, Galeem, the villain of the game, wipes out every single character in the game, like with a ray of light, except Kirby. Kirby is the only survivor of it. So your task is you start with Kirby and you venture out in this gigantic world map that you go around in, and you fight spirits and to reclaim them back. And like the first one I got with Mario, you beat Mario, he comes back to your team, and you just keep venturing around this whole world map and trying to find each person while collecting the smaller spirits at the same time, the ones that are not part of the character roster.
So you travel a world map, and then basically you have to defeat, like, I guess you could say, like a possessed version of the character that you want, basically. And then after you defeat that character, you get that character in your party, or you're able to use that character. Okay.
Yep. And it took me a while to find Link, my main, but I finally found him. So I'm definitely happy about that. The whole thing's been much easier ever since I got him back. I've been using characters I'm not really good with, but more on how it goes deeper into the RPG system. These mini spirits are actually things that you can equip on you and increase their stats and levels. And they have like special attributes. Like one may be you're more resistant to melee attacks, or you're stronger with melee attacks, that type of deal. It's very simplistic, but with a game like this, you wouldn't expect it to be complicated. So it's got a very basic system to it, but in a good way. Mm-hmm. It still lets you keep focusing on the fighting. It's like very once in a while you have to go back and manage it, or there may be some special requirement. Like there was a stage where there was really heavy wind to the point that's really hard to move your character around. without falling off the ledge. But if you found a different spirit before, I think it was the Snorlax spirit, you can equip that on you, and the wind will have no effect on you at all. Like, easy win for the battle. Yeah. If you take the time to find that stuff. If not, it can be a little more difficult on you. Like, I've been trying to do some of these 3-star or 4-star ones, and sometimes, I mean, there's one I was actually trying right now before the podcast, and like the assist trophies were just everywhere, and they were just like demolishing me within seconds. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to leave this one alone, and I'm going to wait till I have a spirit that can properly combat this, so I don't have to keep ripping my hair out.
Yeah. Well, so it sounds like a good time. I'm surprised that there's that much into this game. I've always figured that it was just going to be a standard like arcade style beat 'em up experience, but it's interesting that you have to go through and collect all the characters, and there's a little bit of a plot line and some further customization with it.
Yeah, no, there's multiple ways to get the characters. You can go through World of Light to get them, or you can just, do it by playing, the arcade Smash. Just keep playing over and over. So there's a lot more content in this game than I thought. In the World of Light thing, people have said they've clocked in like 15 to 20 hours beating it.
Jeez.
Yeah.
When officially did this game come out? Like Friday, and people have already logged in at 20 hours. That's crazy.
Yeah. About that. There are
you're one of those
people out there. No, I bought on Friday. I didn't do anything I wasn't supposed to.
Okay.
But there were people who got leaked copies.
Sure.
And they are like miles ahead of us. Obviously, they couldn't do online mode, but they could just play the single player or like the local stuff.
And these aren't people that just got like review copies. These are just regular people. Maybe GameStop gave it to them a day early or something like that.
Some yes, some no. Like Game Explain got a review copy in, but they didn't really release the review till like a day or two before.
Yeah, I think that's part of the rules. Like you can't just start showing the whole game.
The game got universal acclaim. I think it's like sitting on like a 93 in Metacritic.
That's pretty good. It's pretty good. I wonder if it's going to settle there after a couple of months, or if it's going to go up further, or go down. We'll have to see.
But this game is really good. It's if you're a Smash Bros. Fan, you're obviously going to get this. So, but anyone who's looking to get into the fighting game genre and you like Nintendo, this is definitely one of the best games to get you started. It's very accessible. Like the entry level is very low, but like to master it is like my best way to put it. The skill ceiling is really high, but the entryway is very low. So you can get into the game very easily and you could get good at it. But man, I don't know if you've seen like tournaments, but there are just some people that are just ungodly good. I would say I'm pretty decent at the game, but I mean, if I went against a tournament player, I'd get my ass handed to me very fast.
Yeah. Some of those people really devote like basically their whole life as a hobby to some of these games. So
yeah, I mean, and I had a blast Friday night playing with friends. I mean, it just really feels like the old days, N64, few people gathering together on one screen, just having a fun multiplayer time. No online crap, no DLC. Well, there will be DLC, but what I mean is microtransactions, stuff like that.
But I mean, you get a full game, right?
Yeah. Oh, this is a $60 package, without a doubt. Now, they are coming out with 5 new characters over the course of the year of 2019. We'll get Piranha Plant for free, that character, but I don't know if you saw the Game Awards the other night, but they did announce the first DLC character that will be coming out early next year. And that is Joker from Persona 5.
Awesome. Yeah, I did see a little bit on that. So I've been actually this week, I got pretty sick. I had to take a day off work, and It wasn't even like I was so sick I couldn't even play games, believe it or not. All I could do was just sit there in bed. But I'm better now, luckily. I went to the doctor and got situated. But this week, I did two things, or technically I did three things, three accomplishments. First, I finally beat Dragon Quest XI and all the post-game content. I realized an issue I had with the boss was easily solvable. I won't get into it until maybe next week, but I just realized the issue was solvable that I didn't realize, and I was trying to do it the hard way. And I could have saved myself like 20 hours of grinding, but whatever. I did a lot of post-game stuff I probably wouldn't have. So I got that out of the way. I got the Sega Game Classics on Friday. It's the same version that's on the PS4, but I don't own that version, so I was looking forward to this. Amazon did deliver it on time. When I came home from work, it was sitting next to my door, which I was glad to hear, and I was able to get some time into that this weekend. Not as much as I liked because I was kind of focused on Dragon Quest, but I mean, hey, it's got 50 Sega games on there. They look great. It gives you lots of multiple options of ways to play the game. You can stretch the screen, you can shrink it. The colors pop out on the Switch. It looks really good. And
Phantasy Star 4 on there.
Yes, Phantasy Star 4 is on there.
That whole thing is worth it just for that.
Yeah, I started playing it. Man, that's a good game. And what I do appreciate is this is going to sound weird, but the sound chip on the originals Sega was pretty trash, and obviously the sound chip on the Switch is 1,000 times better. Granted, they didn't like remaster the soundtracks or anything, but it does have a little glossier of a sound. It does sound better obviously on the Switch, so I appreciate that, because sometimes you go back and play some of these Sega games, at least for me, some of the soundtracks are some of them make you want to bang your head against a wall, because it's just after 40 hours it's just mind numbing. Some of it's fantastic. So
yeah, sometimes it makes it sound like the one on your side of the speaker about to blow open. Yeah, because it uses like really strong notes. A lot of Genesis games.
Yeah, you know what it is? I think that Genesis soundtracks really excelled when it would just go with like the more techno sound, or like they would just kind of develop their own sound to the soundtrack. But when they tried to like simulate an orchestra, usually it sounded really bad. Or if they tried to do a lot of like percussive like orchestra hits and stuff, that would sound really bad. But certain games like Sonic and even I hate to say it, I'm changing my mind a little bit with Phantasy Star 4. The music is really pretty good. I think with my problem with Phantasy Star 4 in the past with the music was a combination of like the lower quality sound chip, and then a combination of just getting stuck in an area that had like a really repetitive sound that really made me want to just hang myself. But all in all, so far, reminiscing a little bit, it is really, really good. So I've been having a good time with that. The other thing that I did this weekend, I should say, kind of excited. I got one of the things I got on Black Friday too. Also, spent way too much money on Black Friday, but whatever. What are you gonna do? I'm not gonna return the stuff. I got an Elgato capture card, and I installed that into my PC, so that way I could record game footage, and possibly I could stream in the future. We'll have to see. I have to experiment with that a little bit, see how that would work. But that actually worked a lot easier than I thought it would. I just opened my computer up, stuck it in, closed it, downloaded the software, and then connected my PS4 up to it. And it popped right up, and I'm able to record the footage while I play the game on my computer screen if I want to, or I can route it back out to my TV and play it that way. So it's, it plays at 60 frames per second. It seems to work really well. The only issue I've ran into is I got the mid-range Elgato card, which means I can record at 60 frames per second, no problem. But because the PS4 Pro is a 4K machine, technically, I have to go into the menu settings and kind of downgrade it to to cap at 60 FPS or just like 1080p HD, no, like not 4K. Otherwise, it won't read the signal. So it's kind of like dumb because I got a PS4 Pro, but if I want to record that, I have to like I can't watch it on my television in 4K. I have to down lower the quality of it to be able to record it. But what are you gonna do? There always has to be something that's not gonna go the way you planned. So
yeah, that's a life of streaming, man. It's just like one issue after another. I mean, it's worth it all in the end, but like even the best stuff, you're going to be just toggling left and right constantly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wanted an option to be able to, if I want to, be able to record game footage from the Switch or whatever, like my own footage, because I could record stuff, we can record stuff on our own computer with OBS, but to be able to record from the console or the Switch, didn't really have that option. So now I can do that, and, maybe we'll see what happens with that. So, but anyways, that's what I've been doing this week. Let's go ahead and jump into our comments. And we have 7 comments from last week. We're going to get through those, and then we're going to talk about Dragon Quest XI. Non-spoiler, by the way. So if you haven't played that game, no worries. We're going to try not to spoil anything. So let us get over there. All right. So the first question or comment comes from Cerez Cypher. He says, I never played Last Story, despite thinking at the time that it had primarily good reviews. I think some of my reasons for not playing at the time were frivolous, such as I disliked that Sakaguchi would give it a name that is derivative of Final Last Fantasy Story, but I also found from the trailers for it showing the battle system that I could not get a sense of whether I would like it or not. It seemed unique in a way where past experiences weren't suitable references for what it would be like. But hearing from Eric that the battle system is good is encouraging. And I remember reviews tended to say the story was very good, and I'd be up for playing a remaster. I suspect there's a lot of people who missed out on it, so I definitely think there's a market for that. Oh, just ate dinner before this.
The funny thing is that a lot of reviewers professional reviewers who reviewed the game, criticized the battle system for something you could change. Like, they didn't like, because in all fairness, it's set to default, but there's 2 modes in the game, because it's more of like an action oriented type game where it's like you take cover and you swing your sword like at ideal times, or just go into the heat of the fight and just start whacking away. But there's 2 modes, automatic and manual. Automatic is where your character swings by himself. So it gives you ample time to like manage some menu things or team coordination type of deal. Or there's manual, where you're actively pressing buttons to swing at enemies. And I think a lot of reviewers stuck it to automatic, thinking that's how the game worked. And technically it does. But the game is like, the battle system's 50 times better if you set it to manual and take complete control of it yourself, because the game's not like hectic to the point that you can't focus on a couple things at once during the fight. So, I mean, it was very interesting that a lot of reviewers were surprisingly like that. Like, someone told me about it, and I looked at a few reviews, and I was like, yeah, like, they're pretty harsh on the automatic system, like, except the manual. But yeah, the game's really good. I mean, I still highly recommend it. And there's a trademark with Nintendo right now. I know there is some news going around of a supposed Last Story 2, but that leak turned out being fake. So Don't believe that. But I still wholeheartedly believe a HD remaster comes out. And if it does, then if the price is right, then I say definitely go get it.
Yeah. I remember seeing that leak supposedly of the sequel, and I wanted to believe it. We were kind of talking back and forth about it, how cool it would be, but I got to thinking about it later, and I thought to myself, if I've ever seen a fake leak, this looks like a fake leak. But it was kind of cool to think about. But yeah, I think that game kind of came out around the time when people were still really set in their ways for JRPGs. They wanted it to be a very standard battle system. They didn't want you to go off the beaten path. And I think some people kind of looked at that and thought, this isn't the RPG formula that I know. And unfortunately, I think that kind of hurt it a little bit. So.
Yeah, not to mention, I mean, it came out early in Japan, so it met a little more success there. But the Wii was like, this came out in 2011, 2012, I think. Mm-hmm. And that's the same year the Wii U came out. The Wii was at the end of its cycle when Last Story finally came out. And it was one of the Operation Rainfall games. So, you know, it took a while for XE to finally get it out. I mean, it was a great port and everything, and the localization did great. I mean, it was just, it was a bad timing for it.
Yeah.
Simply.
So, anyways, Nintendo trademarked it. We don't know what that means. It could be something like maybe they'll do some kind of tie-in to like another game, or maybe they'll have some kind of mobile title where one of the characters from the game, or maybe they won't do anything with it. Maybe they're just trademarking everything because of all this issue with piracy and ROMs and everything. Who knows? But hopefully we're going to get some kind of word about maybe an HD remaster. I think that's probably what we could expect. That would be a reasonable expectation. So I'm looking forward to that if it comes.
Yeah, that's still my guess also. I think that and Xenoblade 1 are eventually going to make their way to Switch.
With the successes, the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 that just came out on the Switch about a year ago, that thing has been crushing it in sales for its genre. So I'm surprised that we haven't heard a re-release of the original already, because that would just be easy money. So, but I'm sure that's definitely coming.
Actually, after talking with a few friends, I'm actually kind of tempted to just finish off Xenoblade 2, the story, because from what I'm told, the DLC story is like 40 hours in itself, and they apparently fixed a lot of issues with what was in the original game. So I'm genuinely interested to see how that goes. I would like to review in the fullest of like the game story did pretty well, and I would be interested to see how the what's it called, Turnus Journey thing goes. Yeah. So I will definitely do that one day. I don't know when, but it'll happen.
Yeah, I plan on diving into. I've kind of skipped the boat on it just because of some of the things I saw, but a lot of the positive feedback around that Torna Country, I think it was called, has kind of got me interested in giving the game a shot. So we'll have to see. I'll get into it eventually. Let's see here. We got Kingdom Geekdom. He says, as someone who buys mini games digitally, I would never buy a console without a disc drive for two reasons. First being my console is my Blu-ray player, so I would never replace it with something that can't play Blu-rays, even if movies are moving digital as well. The second reason is what you guys were talking about earlier, how the digital prices of games never go down. There are brand new games I can buy physically from Amazon that are half or sometimes even a third the price of what they are on the PS Store. Seems like it ends up being more expensive and less convenient to buy a console without a disc drive. Yeah, I would for sure. I would never replace my current console with one that does not have a disc drive. But I'm trying to think, if I didn't have a lot of money and I still wanted to play current console games, and it was an affordable price in my budget, and that was my only option, I think I would go without a disc drive. But yeah, definitely, like if I had the option of getting one with a disc drive and one without a disc drive, all day, one with a disc drive. I'll pay that extra money. I want to be able to own the physical game. Even if I have to download a bunch of updates and patches to be able to play the full thing, I definitely want that drive in there for sure.
Yeah, and I don't think, now to think about it, I don't think Microsoft is really set out to make a large buck off these consoles. I think they're going to be for a niche crowd that is only looking specifically for the very bare minimum. I mean, Nintendo has done things like that before, where they released the original 2DS, where the specific purpose of it was for children who can't, who always break the hinges on the 3DS.
Yeah.
So I mean, so they made it flat, so it would, it would better fit, and it better fits in the child's hands. I've held one, and like my big adult hands are like on this tiny little thing, but I mean, but it obviously fits much better in a child's hand, and it's much harder to break. It's a very sturdy item, so there's niche items out there that are meant for specifically for people. I doubt they're going towards a hardcore audience with this console. If anything, they're trying to sell the Xbox One X to them.
Yeah,
and
sure.
This is for people who probably don't really game much. The people who like to play Madden or FIFA once in a while type of audience. I think this is who it's aimed towards.
Yeah, the way I look at it is basically just like you said. I view Microsoft as just like a shotgun blast of ideas. Like, okay, we're going to have the most expensive console in the market. Then we're going to try to have the least expensive console in the market. Then we're going to have a mid-range console in the market. We're going to try streaming. We're going to have availability so you can play previous Xbox games on the system. We're going to try everything because we're losing the console war right now, and we need to try something. And just seeing what sticks, what target what market would be their target audience. Is it the people that really can't afford the high end system, or maybe some high end gamers really like the Xbox One X and are willing to spend that $500 right now? I think they're just trying to try a couple different markets and seeing which one does the best, or maybe just try to get the most out of this current generation.
I mean, I'll be interested to see if Microsoft can make a strong comeback next generation. I kind of feel like that's what they're planning. I think they're like, okay, we obviously lost this generation. We won with Xbox 360, but we didn't win with Xbox One. Kind of our fault. We tripped over our own feet.
Yeah,
at the beginning for sure, and we released something that was obviously inferior to the base PS4.
Yeah.
I think they're going to probably make a stronger comeback with like the Xbox 2.
The Xbox XYZ. I don't know.
The Xbox One 2.
Yeah, I don't know. They're going to have to come up with some better marketing here. Maybe they could just come out with a brand new name and kind of leave the Xbox name behind.
Yeah, but I really hope for their success though, because when a company's doing great, it creates competition, and I love it when Sony and Microsoft go head to head on each other trying to make a better product, because at the end of the day, it's us who win when they do that. So
yep.
So really, if anyone's like, oh, I hope Microsoft just burns to the ground the Xbox, like, no, don't think that way. Like hope they are successful, because if they're not, then Sony is going to be like, well, there's no one to challenge us now, so let's just make whatever we want and people will buy it.
Yeah, and then you get conditions like with Nintendo back in the day, just manhandling all these game companies to their demand, because they're basically the most popular kid on the block for games. But yeah, if there's a company to do it, I would say it's Microsoft. They have enough money, that's for sure. So let's move on here. We have from Daniel Scott. Let me drink some water here. He's got a little bit of a longer comment. That's fine, but I can't have cotton mouth while I'm talking. All right, so he says, so hoping to eventually get ports for games I missed out on such as The Last Story, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, FE, etc. I've thought recently about how cool it would be if we ever got the GameCube and Wii Fire Emblem games, Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn. The more RPGs I get on the Switch, the better. And then he has two more comments after that that he's kind of going on. But
yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Nintendo might be just like kind of HD remastering these GameCube games over time, if I had to take a guess, if they're going to bring them in anyway. And I think he's fit the bill.
Yeah, I think the fact that people are excited when these HD remasters are announced You know, whereas in the past it was kind of like a side thing. Like on the PS3, the game got an HD remaster or whatever. Or at the early part of the PS4, the game was getting an HD remaster. It was just kind of released, and like people didn't really talk about it for more than like a week or so. But on the Switch, it's like a whole different ball game. People get excited about it. People are talking about it. We're talking about it, you know, for months and months and months. So I think that's one of the reasons why. That's one reason why I think they'll go through the whole catalog of like a lot of these popular games. But I also think they're going to try to drag it out for that reason, so that when they don't have a lot of games to announce, they can at least be like, well, here's this remaster and here's this remaster. You like this game, didn't you? And that way they can kind of fluff things out a little bit.
On top of that, Fire Emblem didn't start, or like, I mean, it was for a niche crowd, Fire Emblem. But when Awakening came out for the 3DS, that was like the Ocarina of Time of Fire Emblem for America. Like the series just skyrocketed in popularity, and like everyone's like well, JRPG fans in particular are lining up and just getting this game. And like the Echoes and the other 3DS ones that came out, the GameCube and the Wii one came out when it wasn't as popular. It was it's kind of more for a niche crowd then, but imagine those games getting ported and released on the Switch now. That would sell extremely well.
Yeah. And I think that people just kind of realize that now. Like, I think especially like with Nintendo, I think they just realize a lot of these, they have a huge catalog of games, and you know, as cool as it would be to get them all out at once, I think that you know, they're gonna pick and choose what they put out. Obviously, there's other companies that can remaster their own games and put them on the Switch, but you know, I'm sure they have to go through Nintendo and talk about that. So, yeah,
they've been trademarking a couple other stuff too. Like, I think Twilight Princess got copyright again, so people are speculating that they're going to bring the HD remasters of Twilight Princess and Wind Waker from the Wii U over. That'd be great. Twilight Princess on the go, or Wind Waker on the go.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
Daniel Scott goes on to say, as far as the whole digital versus physical future of the gaming industry debate goes, my biggest issue with the digital only industry is the lack of choice. I understand all of the positives to digital games, and I'm happy that people can have that choice from time to time. I myself buy some digital games, though mostly only for smaller indie games. But a future where I no longer have a choice to buy physical media is one that I can guarantee will eventually push me further and further away from my overall enjoyment of games as a hobby. Thankfully, I think we're still a generation or two away from that becoming an issue for gamers like me who want to have the option to go either physical or digital with their purchases. See here, he goes on to say, I guess I really am getting older, and as a result, more and more set in my ways. I've always been a more tactile person when it comes to wanting any form of media. I have to be tangible, something I have to have, I think he's trying to say he has to have the tangible something he can hold and see and have a strong sense of ownership of. To be honest, my digital purchases don't feel the same as physical ones. They're essentially long-term rentals. If the online service shuts down and I somehow accidentally lose the digital purchase without having a backup, it's gone. Unfortunately, even physical media is increasingly becoming more dependent upon online required patches and updates, even on day one, to properly work. So the old ways are indeed coming slowly and surely to an end. But that's life. Yeah. I think that's a big frustration with me, is that we talk all about the future is digital games, and nobody wants that to happen. But the reality is that has already happened. You know, there's very few games that you can just go buy and plop in your PS4 and be able to play without some kind of giant patch. A lot of the games you could play without, an online component, but the problem is a lot of times, they're fixing critical bugs, or there's content that's really valuable or like enjoyable that gets put in later, like Final Fantasy 15's sake. So if they're going to keep doing that but not go fully digital, I'd like to see more complete versions of games, released later down the road. That way you can buy a copy of the game and have all the patches and the downloads and etc. I know a lot of games do that, but I'd like to see that more. So
maybe that's why I'm so against day one patches, and most of the time forgiving when developers say they want to delay so they don't have a major day one patch, because when the day comes when you can't digitally update that game anymore, it's fine because the day one patch is already on the disc. So it's okay if it does that, but a lot of companies don't do that today. They just have that day one patch and take the easy way out.
Yeah, I feel like the day one patch is acceptable in like emergency situations, you know, where the game got out and you didn't realize this game breaking bug, and you know, go ahead and fix it. But a lot of times, you know, they ship the discs. They've printed the discs, they ship them to the stores, and they're still working on the game, you know? And so you get these ridiculous patches on the first day you get it. And a lot of times, you know, if it's a work night, you might not even be able to play the game the day you got it because you plop it in, you got to download it. And I guess, Eric, you got the fastest possible internet, so that's probably not an issue for you. But
I don't know about the fastest, but...
Oh, it's high end, I would say.
1 gig up, 1 gig down.
Yeah, so I got it's not really an issue for me either anymore. I got 1 gig down now, but I don't have 1 gig up. One day I'll get that. But yeah, so very interesting thoughts, Daniel. Really appreciate it. Then we have BioPhoenix. He says Darksiders 3 looks good from what I looked into. I really like the first game, and I do like the Dark Souls formula, so I'm sure I would enjoy it, but I will get it later once the patches iron it out.
Actually, interesting thing is they just released a patch for it this week, or last week, more like patch 1.04, and it did fix a lot of the frame rate issue that was plaguing the game and the load times. They fix a lot of it. Now, the game does still get lower in frame rate when like hectic situations happen, but they did fix a lot of it. And I mean, the game feels so much better than it did before it. It is still a relatively short game, though, unless you want to collect absolutely everything in that game. When I beat, I clocked about, I would imagine, like between like around 15 hours or so for that type of game, which is a pretty good length for the game.
Yeah,
but for what it is, I would probably say wait till it's a bit cheaper. If it's like if it's like $40, then I say go for it.
Yeah, 15 hours, that seems like an enjoyable amount of time for me. Like that's kind of like the window where I'm like, okay, this is enjoyable. I can beat this in a weekend or two. But yeah, paying full price for that can be a little steep. Now that you've brought this patch up, though, that kind of plays into our last point, and it kind of occurred to me now that, you know, that's one of the biggest things I heard about this game when it came out was that frame rate issue. And it wasn't like a game-breaking thing, but certain people, like basically every review I saw, felt like they needed to bring that up. And the fact that they were able to fix it so quickly, like you see this all the time where it's just like something that is just brought up in every single initial review, and then they're able to fix it in like a week or two. And it's like, why didn't you just do that before the game came out? Like, did you not know that was going to be an issue? And I realize you run into like, you know, time constraints, but it just boggles my mind that like games will come out with something that they can fix in like a week or two, and they know every reviewer is going to bring it up. Like, why would you just not take care of that, you know?
Yeah, it does seem a bit weird. I'm not going to pretend to know the insides and outs of it, but they were pretty quick to fix that frame rate issue. I was thinking that was something that would be like a month or two after the game's release that they, you know, do some revamps on the back end of things and just get the frame rate better, or it's just something they didn't have time to completely get the kinks out of. But man, it was like a week and a half, and they fixed the frame rate for the most part. It's not perfect, but they did like iron out a lot of it.
Yeah. So let's go on here. He goes on to say, BioPhoenix, I actually don't hate GameStop, EB Games in Canada, but same thing. But yeah, I never had an issue with them personally. Now, yes, the trade-in credit is not great unless they have a special trade-in deal going on. But regularly, I think they are still better than most pawn shops and retro stores for trade-ins I've been to. You know, that is a very honest statement that I totally agree with. GameStop does not give you a fantastic deal, but for certain games, they give you a better deal than a lot of those retro shops do, or like places you see in the mall where it's like a retro type deal. Man, those places just will, you know, gut you and sell your kidney for what they'll give you for the games. Like GameStop, you're not going to make a fortune off of it, but you know, they give you a better deal than some of those other trade-in places.
I agree to an extent that it's mostly because pawn shops don't know the value of these games. So a lot of times they're just going to give you barely jack squat for it. And I guess GameStop knows the value of the games more, definitely. But there's someone else who knows the value of that game even better. And that is you. You know the value of the game. You know how much you paid for it. And if you bought like a $60 brand new game and it turned out you actually didn't like it, you can put it on. It's so easy today. eBay makes it so easy for you. The most you have to do is
ship it,
which they already give you the label for. And you can go to your nearest post office or
just drop it in the box.
It in the box. That's all you got to do. And you get your money as soon as they get it. And so you buy the $60 game and it turns out, oh, wait, I actually didn't like it. But if I trade into GameStop, they're going to give me like $25 for it. So, but people are willing to buy the games on eBay for like $50. So you can be like, oh, there's a $10 loss, you know, and maybe a little tax on, but you get more money out of it ultimately that can go towards another game. See, where GameStop gets you and where they do get you is the convenience. You don't have to do those slight steps. You don't have to deal with the tax from it or anything like that. So people think to themselves, well, maybe I'll just not have the $15 or $20 extra and just trade it into GameStop and count losses. So that's where GameStop basically feeds on that, is the convenience factor. So people rather do that than ship out to eBay, which I encourage people to do eBay, but I halfway understand at the same time.
Yeah. When I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years, and one of my roommates at the time, used to drive me nuts. He would buy a game brand new for $60 from GameStop. He would beat the game in like a weekend or two, and then he would return the game and sell it back to GameStop for GameStop like store credit, and then buy another game. And so he only had like 1 or 2 games at all times. And I kept thinking to myself, like, these are the type of people that GameStop loves. Because like you're paying full price for the game and then you're turning it around and giving it back to them for like $25 so they can go sell it for 50 or whatever, or 55. Yeah. And then you're turning around and getting another one in which you'll sell it back to them for 25. Like, and they could just do this all day and just make money. But he seemed to like it. He felt like he was getting a better deal out of it because to him, you know, why would I replay a game that I beat? So, you know, there are people out there like that.
Honestly, if GameStop like increased the value, especially with something new, like say you bought, like I just bought Super Smash Bros. And I decide tomorrow, I'm like, I'm bored with that. I'm going to go trade it in. I'm like, if I go trade it, that's a $60 game. And they still profit heavily from me trading it in. I think 40 to 45 would be a much fairer trade in, especially if it's store credit. Because I'm going to put it towards buying something else more than likely. And, you know, they still profit off of it. But I think it's pretty egregious to be $25 to $30 and they sell it back for $55.
Yeah, I think like they should have a scale of how popular is this game? How likely is it going to sell, right? So if it was, God of War, the newest one, like that's probably going to sell real quickly when you put it on used. So just give somebody $40 if they're turning that back in, as long as it's in good shape, But if it's, an obscure title that's probably going to sit on the store shelf for, a month and a half that's selling poorly, maybe, Mass Effect Andromeda or something, like, then that's not really an obscure title, but whatever. It got a bad rap and people really were not really buying it as much as some of the other titles. For that one, I could see maybe getting like 30, 35 because, it's going to sit on the store shelf for a while. They may not be able to get the full use price for it, but when you get
the more rare it is, the more they charge for it use.
Oh, yeah. So I guess rare wasn't a good word. I meant like poorly rated. So like Star Ocean 5 or whatever. What was the subtitle?
Blah, blah. I can't remember.
Yeah, whatever. The most recent Star Ocean game that got a lot of bad reviews. Like, if you bought that day one, it was $60 and you returned it. They saw that it's getting 6.5 out of 10. Okay, I understand you're not going to give them $40 for that because you might put that on the store shelf and it might sit there for 2.5 months. At which point the full price new version's $45 because it got such terrible reviews. I understand giving you a little bit less money for that, but if it's a 9 out of 10 game or like a Horizon Zero Dawn or something, like when that game came out, that used copy is going to sell the next day. You don't need to be giving people $25 for that. That is ridiculous.
Yeah. Now there are certain games that like drop in price really quickly. When Madden's come out every year, those are like the number one games that are traded in. They're traded in so much to the point that like you get way too many of them in the store and you have to like put like a good stack of them and throw them in a box and ship them back out to the GameStop warehouse. It gets that overflowing with games like Madden because people play it and they trade it in pretty much when the next one comes out.
Mm-hmm. See, I think that's like because you used to work at GameStop, right?
Like
a long time ago.
Yeah, in high school.
So that was a long time ago. So
yeah, I would say over 10 years ago.
So obviously a lot of stuff's changed.
Yeah.
But it's dumb stuff like that GameStop does is probably part of the reason why they're in the situation that they're in currently, is they try to put like a one size fits all strategy on it. And man, I would be having like some intricate computer system that has like rotating prices, like how many Madden games do we have in stock right now? Oh, we were basically overfilled with these games. Okay, fine, we'll give you $20 for this brand new game. Oh, we only have 2 copies. Okay, we'll give you $45. Like I think like they could have a system like that would allow them to be a little more efficient with their sales. But
yeah, within a year, a trade-in value of a previous year Madden game. So like say 2019 comes out and everyone trades in their 2018 copy. Most of them are only going to get about $5 to $10 for them.
Yeah. Well, that makes, I'm not going to cry anyone a river because those games come out every year and that's just like, those are like those games don't hold their value too well. I mean, you can find
too many of them.
Yeah. So anyways, let's keep going on here. We got, he goes on to say, the last story was really good, and this may sound crazy to some, but out of the Xseed Wii games, I found it was the best one. Speaking of recent trademarks, did you hear that Square did one for Parasite Eve? I'm not going to keep my hopes crazy high since they did the same thing with Valkyrie Profile a while ago, and what came out of it was a mobile game. Hooray, LOL. Yeah.
How recent was this? Because they did put Parasite Eve on the Japanese PlayStation Classic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Maybe that's why they did that.
Yeah,
it would be cool if we got some like a HD remaster or some kind of maybe like a remake of that game.
Yeah, if there's any Square Enix game that could really use a remake. I mean, I love the first Parasite Eve. I love it on a nostalgic level, but if I gave it to like any more modern gamer, I mean, it would look horrid and ugly to them. Yeah. I think that's a game. You're right. That's a game that would definitely benefit from a full-on remake. Like have an over-the-shoulder type of like control similar to Resident Evil.
Yeah, just basically update the controls and update the graphics for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't really looked at that too much regarding Parasite Eve and the recent trademark, but you never know.
Yeah. So. I mean, my guess is only as good as yours.
Yeah. Silver Music Box, he says, one thing a lot of people don't realize is that if GameStop goes under, physical games probably would too. So if the majority of people that want them to go under and they love physical games, then they better be careful what they wish for. Also, wishing for something to go under, even though they are not a perfect company, is immature. Or like you guys said, people would lose jobs. Yeah, I mean, I don't want any company to go under. I just want them to have better business practices. And I don't really have a problem with GameStop in general on that front. I know I've seen some news regarding like the way they treat their employees, but it seems like it's pretty hit or miss. You know, I've seen some GameStop employees say they have no issues. Other ones seem to have problems. So I think it's a case-by-case basis.
I'll tell you, as someone who worked at a GameStop,
yeah,
it's retail. That's all it is. It's nothing special. Nothing out of the ordinary. Mm-hmm. I mean, the same type of crap you deal at GameStop is pretty much the same type of crap you'll deal at any retail. There's one thing that can make GameStop stand out a little more is that they pressure employees to get the pre-orders and subs for the magazine. That's the worst thing they do. But really, your experience as an employee at GameStop is going to differ depending on which one you're at. The ones I was at were okay. I mean, I was friends with the managers, and you know, they weren't overbearing. The senior manager, like the person who manages like the whole district. I mean, it was rough dealing with him, but you know, that's just kind of the nature of it. I think anyone who just thinks it's a evil place to work at a GameStop, it's not. I mean, there may be like a certain couple particular places that, you know, have a really bad manager or just like an asshole one. But
yeah,
I mean, at the same time, but there are good ones also. Like the GameStop I visit, like between my home and my work, like the people there are nice. You know, the manager there is very nice. I'm friends with him. And, you know, it's a case by case thing. Like I said, it's just retail.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is it's a case-by-case basis. I will say the last couple of times I've been into a GameStop and made a purchase, they've done two noticeable changes that I've noticed. I don't know if this is nationwide, but they used to do that thing where when you walk in, it's got that automatic like thing that comes out that says "Welcome to GameStop," and it like tries to let you know that like everything you're doing is being recorded. I don't know if you've.
Yeah, that's the reason. That's the primary reason we greet. Well, it's two reasons. There's two reasons why you greet people every time they come in. It's one, because customer courtesy, you know,
sure,
good customer service. Two, it lets people know that we know you're there.
Yeah.
So if you're going there to shoplift, you know, you're going to have to be a little more careful.
Yeah, well, I mean, this was a pre-recorded audio message that would just blare over the stereo or the speakers every time somebody walked in. It would have some guy yell, "Welcome to GameStop," blah 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 blah, and it's like it's like right when you walk in, it's like super loud, and then while you're browsing through games, if four more people walk in, you know, the thing would go off four more times, and I always found it to be obnoxious. So I've noticed locally where I'm at least that has not, they've stopped doing that. Now they just do, like you said, the employees will be like, "Hey, welcome to GameStop," and like I think that is better because it is an actual person, right? Because, you know, if somebody's trying to steal something, they don't, if it's just a pre-recorded message, that's not really letting them know people are watching them. But then also the other thing is when I'm purchasing stuff, they'd always be like, "Hey, are you a member?" And I would say no, and then they try to hassle me to be a member, like you said, or to make other purchases. And they've stopped doing that, at least where I'm at. So that's made me actually want to go inside a GameStop because I don't feel like I'm going to get hassled. So
yeah, I think I can't say because I haven't, like I said, I haven't worked there in 10 years, but I think they probably lightened up on it.
Yeah. I think
the reason for the pre-owned sales was mostly because the companies that are giving them the games want to know how many they should ship out to the store. So GameStop would always encourage people to pre-order. So like a lot of people pre-order Madden, that tells the company, okay, we need to ship this many titles out to them. It was like a convenience factor for them. Like they know how many they should ship out. So like
makes sense.
No one reserved a niche JRPG 3DS game, then they will just ship out just a few.
Yeah. That makes sense. I totally get it. It was just annoying, when you're just trying to pay and get out of there, but it's what it is. Yeah. Next up, we have Tommy2129. He says, The Last Story is the best JRPG game on the Wii. I have played it, passed all the game, and it is amazing. I hope they make a remake and The Last Story 2 on the Switch. Can't wait to see it. I hope they at least come out with a remaster. It looks like I don't know if you're referencing the leak, but we've already said, looks like that, at least that specific leak was a fake. Now that doesn't mean they're not making a sequel or they wouldn't remake the game. So totally agree with your sentiment there. That'd be really, really cool.
Hopefully they release a remaster. Then the remaster sells very well, and that motivates Sakaguchi and this group to work with Nintendo again on getting a Last Story 2 out.
Yeah. Remakes always make me uncomfortable because, you don't know when you play the game, if you end up not liking the remake, you don't know if it's because they remade the game. Like, do you like the original better? I
would imagine he was referring to remaster. Yeah, the game came out not too long ago. So, and the art style in the game looks great. It definitely needs a resolution bump. And maybe a frame rate bump also.
Yeah.
And the game would still look really good.
Yeah. Totally agree. All right. So Daniel Scott, this is our last comment, and then we can get on with our Dragon Quest 11. He says, I'm getting a 2DS XL for Christmas and a couple of RPGs. So it's been on my mind a lot lately. I'd love to hear you guys talk a little bit about your favorite Nintendo 3DS RPGs, maybe your top 5 or something. You could simply provide a brief explanation of the game and why it makes it on your list. Just a thought. Eric is going to be a lot more familiar with the 3DS catalog of RPGs than I will be. But I don't want to say only, but the two that come to mind off the top of my head is one I know that Eric would probably bring up, which is Dragon Quest 8. Isn't it the definitive version on the 3DS?
Depends on what you're looking for. But gameplay and content wise is the definitive version.
Yeah, so I know that's a hot item, and then obviously Xenoblade Chronicles, the first one that came out in 3DS, and that's really cool that you could have that game portable. So I would definitely recommend that if you haven't picked that up. But I've seen that some people say they didn't really like it on the 3DS as much as they did at home on the screen. I don't know.
It wasn't. I guess it wasn't really better or worse than the console version. It was just a lower resolution, so it was going to be, naturally not look as good as it would be on a large TV. But I mean, if you're looking for a portable experience with it, it's definitely more unserviceable. But you do need a new 3DS or new 2DS to play it, because it requires a special or it requires the processor that's in it.
So, and that's kind of what I was looking at, is like games specifically for the 3DS. But Eric, do you have some recommendations for Daniel?
Yes, Dragon Quest 7 also. That is a 80 to 100 hour experience on the main story. That will definitely take up a lot of time for you, and it's a great game. I will say one that is a definitely must own on the 3DS, if you haven't already played it on the DS, is Radiant Historia. That is a must own title for RPG fans. I had such a blast playing that game. Like, my hands were glued to my 3DS. Like, I just needed to know what happened next in that game. And I really love the time mechanics where you switch between alternate realities and back in time to those points of reality. to get to the ultimate conclusion of the game. I thought it was going to be like overly complex and like not make sense and be, you know, complicated for the sake of it, but it was really simple. It was really straightforward, and it was so easy to understand while not talking down to you at the same time. I mean, it is just such a great story on so many levels. That one I definitely recommend, without a doubt. The Mario and Luigi games are pretty good. They remade the Game Boy Advance one, the first one for the 3DS, and that's a really good, faithful remake. They have the Paper Jam one also, Mario and Luigi Paper Jam. That one's pretty decent. It's not as good as Superstar Saga, which is the one I just talked about. But I mean, that'd be a worthwhile pickup also after you played like the other ones. Alliance Alive was pretty good. That's a very, I
played that one.
Yeah, it's a very old school JRPG type game, but it does give you a nice nostalgic feeling of the Super Nintendo PS1 days, of like some of those like obscure RPGs you find, like the Saga series. Yeah, it does kind of remind me of that some. That was a pretty good title, and the artwork was really good too. They ported Tales of the Abyss, which was definitely one of the best Tales titles out there. It was a straight port, so you're not going to like, you know, get like some definitive version of it, but it is a portable experience. So if you don't, and it was on the PS2, which is an outdated console. The 3DS is a good way to go with that. Trying to think if there's anything else really good on there. Those are definitely the bigger ones. I can kind of look back here. Well, of course, the Fire Emblem games, Fire Emblem Awakening, Fire Emblem Echoes, and there was a remake of one that came out for the Nintendo. I forget that name, but basically any Fire Emblem game will serve you well. Awakening in particular, like I just mentioned earlier in the podcast, was like the game that made Fire Emblem extremely popular today. So if you want to see the title that made all that happen, get Awakening. Yeah, that was a solid title. I really enjoyed that.
For sure.
And is there anything else? There's Ever Oasis. That's pretty okay. I guess that's really the big ones that we mentioned. I can't really see it too well from here, but yeah, that's a really good place to start off with just everything we mentioned.
Yeah, so if you pick all those up, you'll be in pretty good shape. Obviously, if you're listening to this and you got some suggestions for Daniel, let us know in the comments and we'll bring it up and maybe give us some further recommendations. But I think at this point, we should go ahead and just transfer into our Dragon Quest XI non-spoiler discussion. Okay, so Dragon Quest XI non-spoiler discussion. As I just stated, we're going to try very, very hard not to spoil anything. So we can guarantee that we're not going to spoil major plot points. We're not going to spoil, like any like late game bosses or anything like that, villains and stuff like that. We're not going to be spoiling any of that stuff. We're just going to be giving our general thoughts on this from the perspective of maybe someone who's listening that has not played Dragon Quest XI or is thinking about playing Dragon Quest XI, or maybe has picked it up but is only shortly or in the beginning stages of the game. So that way we're not ruining the game for you. And then next week, we're going to actually get into the actual spoiler side of things. So that'll be for the people that have played the game entirely or have played majority of the game and want to hear us talk about our thoughts with the game and what we think with some of the later game stuff. So we'll try to structure this the best we can, and it's, obviously we're not going to talk about it for 2 hours because we're doing non-spoilers here. It's going to be fairly brief but thorough. But Eric, I think it's safe to say that you enjoyed this game, correct?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah,
it's a tremendous game. It's a masterpiece. It's such a good throwback to the good old days of classic JRPGs while still masterfully modernizing the genre at the same time.
Yeah. I think that's the best way to put it, is that this really felt like an old school game. Like kind of like we used to get a game on a Super Nintendo or even the PlayStation, and it would just like the sequence of events and the way the plot unfolded, and just the how dense the world was. This feels like one of those old school games, and that's something that I really appreciate about it, because it is kind of a unique experience today. A lot of times you see, these companies trying to capitalize on the kind of that retro nostalgia feel, but they don't. They end up making like a 15-hour game, or like it's just not as good as it used to be. This game is like if a AAA studio put in tremendous resources on making a game like they used to, and for that reason, like it's a really cool experience, especially if you're into those older styled games, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it is just, I don't know the best way to put it. Like, I always like that, like, things just kept getting modern and updated over time, like between the Super Nintendo and the PlayStation era. And like, this feels like the next step up that. And what I'm glad is that Dragon Quest always holds those traditional roots and standards, even though Dragon Quest X is a pretty obscure one in the series, but it still holds a lot of the classic values. But anyways, I mean, that's just really the best way to put it. Like, this is a game that was made for both veterans and newcomers of JRPGs. It's such a great blend, and but I mean, if I want to like point out the small bits of it, like great battle system, great soundtrack, awesome world map. Towns were amazing. The world you just get immersed in so quickly. Something feels unique with every town. The pacing is great. The writing is great, witty, funny, emotional when it needs to be. That's the great thing I like about games like Dragon Quest so much, is that they make such a group of likable characters that when and they have like a bunch of funny moments together, a very lighthearted, adventurous type deal. So when the bad things do happen and things get dark, it's like you really feel for these characters. You really want them to succeed. You've been on an adventure with them. You've got the bond with them. You care about them. And so because of that, you ultimately want to see them succeed. Dragon Quest always does such a good job at this, even though the main protagonist is always silent.
Mm-hmm.
Even him, you can get a feeling for him. You can tell what he's like, and how he would react to something, even though it's supposed to be ultimately you being portrayed into the game in some form. But even then, I still feel like he has a character.
Mm-hmm.
Type deal.
I think one of the biggest things that I've enjoyed about this game was the characters themselves, which you've kind of alluded to. They have a really good chemistry together. They just fit together like a glove, and the dialogue's really good. It's really snappy to the point, but really well written. So a lot of times with RPGs, you get stuck in this like dialogue tree where somebody's just going on and on about something you don't care about. These cutscenes, there's a lot of them, but they're short and to the point. So I really like that. But also, I felt like the voice acting was phenomenal for this game.
Yes.
And that's not something I usually appreciate with all JRPGs. A lot of times the voice acting is over the top, or there's a character or two that I didn't really appreciate. But whoever picked the voice actors and directed the voice acting in this game did a phenomenal job. I mean, the people who are acting these lines just read the lines perfectly, and nothing was too over the top. It was funny when it needed to be funny. It was fantastic.
I would say it can be over the top,
but if it was over the top, it meant to be over the top for the most part. There were a couple of NPCs. I would say the voice acting was a little odd, but those NPCs were not reoccurring, so it didn't. It's not like it was a ongoing thing. But for your main party and the main people in the game, I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, because the thing I noticed in a lot of JRPGs is that there's a lot of awkward moments. Like if you play Final Fantasy 13, 15, or like Kingdom Hearts, it's like in the localization, at least, there's just some weird awkward pauses, or just some weird over the top things that like a normal human being wouldn't say, which immediately just takes you out of the experience. The benefit Dragon Quest has is that it kind of knows it's kind of a cartoon in a way. So it embraces that and kind of goes over the top and silly at times. Like, if you've ever seen anything from Akira Toriyama, like Dragon Ball, or anything like that, there's a lot of silly moments. Like moments where it knows it's like fiction cartoon. It doesn't try to ground itself into reality too much. And because of that, like the characters just delightful. They're just kind of wacky sometimes, or silly, or over the top, but memorable and just charming.
Yeah, I think I kind of looked at this game as more of like it almost seems like a collection of stories, right? Where like there's a sequence of events occurring, and like it's like, okay, this is what happened on the journey. Okay, this is what happened on the journey. And like when you look at these like sequence of stories and of themselves, like, hey, we went and helped this person, or we helped this town. Like every little news segment has a beginning, middle, and end. And then it's like, okay, let's go on to the new thing. And I really, really liked it for that reason. If there's
Yeah, you're right. You're right, and it's awesome like that. Just to add further to your point,
sure.
It's great like that because it's still on the main focus of their main goal. It doesn't feel like they just strayed off to the side and doing something that just feels completely non-relevant to the story. Because that's what takes people out quick, unless you go like little side quest markers, which you don't have to do. But if you just want to do anyways to get some immersion in the town, that's up to you. But you can still go through the story, and like your main goal is still intact, even when it's like, all right, I needed to get a scepter from this place, but to get it, I had to go on a journey to another place to get another item, which flowed to another type of story. But your main goal was still there ultimately to get like the sword of light. Like that's still your ultimate goal, but these were just the means you had to go through to get there. And because of that, you get these like different kind of stories in between it, and you really get to know the people of the world through these means. Like I'll not spoil it, but the fishing town, you remember that?
Yeah.
Was that not just freaking magical?
Yeah, for sure.
It was.
Yeah, I think that's my issue with a lot of Dragon Quest games, and it's not an issue I usually bring up too much because I feel like it ends up paying off always, but Dragon Quest games tend to spend a lot of time, at least the ones I played, that spends a ton of time world building, right? Where like you get thoroughly invested in like every town and like every like little area of the map. There's like something that goes on, and you get like really, really involved with everyone in the entire planet. And you're like, why is this taking so long? And it's like, well, because they invested so much into that world. When the plot develops in other ways, you feel more engaged with it, or more a part of that world, because you didn't just zip by everything. You actually sunk your teeth into stuff and kind of got to know everything, and how the world is supposed to function. So from a world building perspective, I think this game did a really good job.
Yeah, nothing feels like a waste of space. Like everything has a purpose.
Yeah, for sure. I think that one glaring problem I had with the game that somebody would probably notice almost immediately if they pick this game up now is at first the soundtrack, it's a little jarring because they used the synth. They had a synthesized version of the orchestra, and I would say that I beat the game. I have about 135 hours into the game, which is quite a bit for me and this series. And I would say that like I haven't really thought about the synthesized soundtrack in probably 125 hours. Like it's, you know, you get at first it is a little jarring because you're used to, you know, a PS4 game. It's going to have an orchestra or something like that, but they used a synthesized version on this game for a very good reason. Do you want to kind of give some background context on that? Because I know you probably know a little bit more about it than I do.
I mean, in my personal opinion, as a major Dragon Quest fan, I'm always fine with this type of soundtrack because it makes it feel like the old school type of deal. So I really don't mind that. I mean, I guess it's a fair criticism if you prefer like an orchestrated version, especially since it exists technically.
Yeah, just go on YouTube. It's available.
Yeah, you can get on YouTube and I mean, you didn't hear from me, but you can you got to do some searching, but you can, if you get the PC version of Dragon Quest 11, you can patch it with the orchestra music. Someone took the time to find all the track pieces in the game that have an orchestrated version of them. And made it into a mod. So if you really, really need that orchestrated soundtrack, then, you know, there is that means to do it. But you can't do it on the PS4, obviously. But anyways, what Hat was mentioning is the reason why we have this version, and apparently Japan has the same version also, is that the orchestrated version is, and take this with a grain of salt, obviously, but apparently the orchestrated version is owned by Sugiyama. And apparently Sugiyama is not easy to work with in terms of the legal side of things.
And Sugiyama is
the main composer.
Right. Okay.
Every Dragon Quest since the first game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to take note of that little fun fact, the same director / producer, the same artist, and the same composer have been working on the Dragon Quest series since the first game. Yuji Horii for director-producer, Akira Toriyama for the art, and Sugiyama for the music.
Boom. That's awesome that they've stayed together that long.
Yeah, and the quality is still there.
But you were saying the composer is difficult to deal with. From what I saw, he like insists that a live orchestra, like everyone that plays on the orchestra recording, also gets recordings or royalties for every game sold. Is that correct?
Yeah, and my guess is Square Enix doesn't want to deal with that.
Yeah, because selling it in the West, like having to pay like 300 different people, you know, royalties from every unit sold, that can get really, really old fast.
I mean, of course, if anyone has better information than I do, please post it in the comments. But that's pretty much what I heard. But it kind of makes me think that, like, what happened during Dragon Quest VIII where they allowed the orchestra to be on the PS2 version in America? It wasn't on the Japanese version, but it was on the American version. So I don't know if they decided to pay royalties for any Western copies that came out. To Sugiyama, or if there's some entirely different story to it for the time. But I don't know. That's an interesting mystery to dive into.
Yeah, but regardless, all I'm saying is that the synthesized version, it's of high quality. I mean, you can tell it's synthesized, but it's of high quality. And I would say after 5 or 6 hours, you don't even think about it. And
there are plenty of times where it like the music just complemented the scene so well, and I got so hooked into it and emotional over some scenes. I mean, the music definitely serves its purpose.
So, and this game has all the standard Dragon Quest little pieces of charm. It's the same little old school sound effect of going down the steps from the Super Nintendo version. It's got all the same little like level up sounds, and It's got the puff scenes and everything in that like that you would expect in a Dragon Quest game. So this isn't like a game where they tried to go off in a dramatically new direction. This is a Dragon Quest game on the PlayStation 4. So that's really, really cool. I found it really surprising for that reason. I thought they were kind of try to change up the formula a little bit, but
yeah, it is not Final Fantasy. This is, and really, to tell you the truth, it would be very risky for them to do something like that because this game, Dragon Quest, may come out in America, but this game is ultimately made for people in Japan because it's a national holiday when a Dragon Quest mainline game comes out in Japan. There were those rumors that they had to ship it on the weekend because of their government. They told them to do it. That's not true. There was no legal action taken against Enix or Square Enix, depending. But they did it under request from, I think, like law enforcement. They're like, can you just please do this on the weekend so things are not so freaking hectic during the weekday when people are trying to get like to work and stuff like that. And
that's
Square,
awesome.
Or Enix or Square Enix were like, yeah, okay.
No problem. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. I think one other thing that some people might be interested in with this game that is a little bit different is the difficulty level, right? So usually Dragon Quest games they tend to be very, very, I don't want to say very, very difficult, but they're generally like they're not easy, I would say.
Moderately challenging.
Yeah. And this version of this game is if you play it on the standard settings, it is, I would say, from what I've played and I haven't played all the Dragon Quest games, but from the ones I have played, it is easier for sure than the other ones, which might be a little bit of a turnoff. But there's two reasons for that, and then there's kind of a solution to that. There's a couple different solutions that you can do. First off, there's no encounter rate, so you can just skip all the monsters if you want to. And if you do that, you're clearly going to be underleveled, and it's going to be quite challenging. Some of these bosses are very challenging regardless, especially later in the game. But, I mean, there is that fact to it. But the other thing, too, is that it's kind of hard for me to say this game is easy because, like, they put like most of the game as kind of like easier than other Dragon Quest games, but then like there's a difficulty peak and some of the later stages, some of the post game stuff that like I would say is every bit as difficult or as strategic as some of the other Dragon Quest games. And it's not like just like a little boss here or a little boss there. It's actually very, very elaborate, and like they put a lot of time into some of this other content that is as difficult as some of the other Dragon Quest games. So, it's kind of got that balance there, but you will have to deal with a little bit of feeling like it's kind of a walk in the park for a little bit until you get to that point. So,
yeah, and there's the Draconian quest if you really need some challenges, but the Draconian things are really more like artificial difficulty settings. It doesn't like make the game just like generally harder. What it does, it limits certain things, like you can't buy weapons and equipment from towns. You can only get what you find in like dungeons, or you can't level up, or you can't use certain things, or you can't use items. So if you want like a more unique challenge, then you go about that way. But this is definitely an easier Dragon Quest game comparatively to the previous ones. But that doesn't mean that it's very easy. If you're a JRPG veteran and you just like know the ins and outs of these type of systems, you're going to get through the game fairly easy. Like Hat mentioned before, it'll get a lot harder on you if you don't run into encounters often, particularly in dungeons. because the bosses will take you down if you decide to just keep skipping enemies over and over. My best suggestion is when you're in dungeons, each enemy you come across, fight them. Just take them on. And on the way, and chances are you'll get the appropriate level, the appropriate abilities to take down the boss.
Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, that's the biggest thing. If you're taking your time with each enemy, when you get to that boss, you're going to have no problem most of the time. But if you are just trying to plow through the game, you'll definitely get punished for that. But regardless, some of the other content in the game, it'll make you think twice that the game's that easy, because there's some very, very difficult stuff in this game for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Especially post-game.
Yeah, post-game stuff for sure. Like all of my characters are level 99, and there's still one or two post-game things that like I didn't complete because like I have to rework my strategy. So it's not all easy, but most of it can be. Most of the main story is a little bit easier than that post-game stuff, which I frankly think that's the way RPGs should be structured. If you're going to be doing story stuff, like don't make it like so difficult to where you can't really progress the story anymore because you just can't get to a boss. Put that stuff on the optional side for those people that really want those like challenge quests and stuff like that. I think that's an appropriate way to structure things. So.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. So we talked about the music, we talked about the difficulty and like our general thoughts with it. And you said you liked the battle system, right?
Yeah, battle system. I mean, it's very straightforward. It's a turn-based system. No encounters. You have to run into enemies. Every character has 2 to 3 weapons they can equip, and they all can serve in different ways and have different abilities. But as you level yourself up to 99, you'll ultimately be able to unlock all the skill panels for everything. So don't fret too much if like you decide you like another weapon, because on top of that, you can go to a priest and you can reset your skill tree. And if it turned out like you were using sword on the hero, but you want to use a greatsword instead, go to a priest in the town, unlock the skill or reset the skill tree, and then you can set everything towards the greatsword side. But like I said, when you get to 99, you can fill out everyone's grid and you can be good with everything at all times. But as you're progressing through the game, you make those type of choices. But you're ultimately not locked to something. So it does offer a lot of variety in what you can do. And another great thing is that every character is unique. They bring something like their own unique thing to the table. Like the hero is a versatile, like physical and magical user.
Yeah.
Knight type character. Then you have Veronica, which is like the mage, and she can use a staff or a whip. And then you have like Eric the Thief that has a lot of agility like abilities, or support abilities, or damage over time type abilities, or like assassin type stuff on top of that. Like each character is different, and the best part about it is you can swap them in and out of battle, mid battle. So
I use that a lot, especially in end game stuff.
Yeah, it feels pretty necessary by end game. Like you want to bring Eric out just to do the boulder ability that does damage over time. Then you can put him back, and then bring back another character and have them going off on them. Or if you want to keep healers back and bring a healer out just when you need to refresh the party, that type of deal. I mean, there's a lot of strategies you can come up with. You do have to sacrifice that character's turn to switch someone, but that's like the worst consequence out of that. And the best thing on top of that is all characters that join you on your journey level up with you, so they don't all have to be in battle.
Yeah,
like you can have like a character you never want to use ever, and they're still leveling up with you. It's just you have to gear all of them. That's the big thing.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think my initial uh, thoughts on the battle system was that while this is a functional battle system, I thought that this was like a very simple version of a battle system. I felt like it was like a pretty standard battle system. But as the game progressed and I got more abilities, like it kind of unraveled a little bit, and it really has its own unique style of play for this game. And I think one of the reasons is that unique aspect of each character, and they really set that apart with having different like linked strikes and stuff like that, special abilities when they're pepped up, which is basically like the Final Fantasy version of being trance or limit break. But like, there's so many different skills and so many different like various link moves that you can do and combine like different characters. Basically their pep or their trance state or the limit break, and get a variety of different moves. Like I'm like, I put a lot of time into this game, and sometimes like I still have to like hover over like a move and like read the description of what it does, because like there's just like so many. Like I'm at the point now where I got like 9 pages of moves I can do, and then whenever like my characters are pepped up, I got like page after page of just like like joint strikes that they can do, and all of them do dramatically different things for the most part. And if you really dig deep into a lot of these different linked strikes and such, there can be some really beneficial stuff you can do that can really turn the tide of battle towards your side. And I think that's one of the things I really like about this battle system is it seems a little basic at first, but like if you just dive into it, there's a lot there if you want to really get invested in it.
Exactly. That's the best way to put it. The battle system is very simple, very easy to understand, but there's a lot of depth to it. There's a lot you can make out of it. And because of that, because the simplicity of the system, it also means that you can make bosses or enemies more unique or have like interesting circumstances that you have to deal with because of the simplicity of the battle system, which I always go back to this as an example, but I know it's not an RPG, so bear with me a little bit. The best comparison I can make is Super Mario Bros. On the NES. And all you have to do in that game is run left and right, jump on enemies, get to the end of the goal. I mean, those are your mechanics, ultimately. You can get like a fire thing and shoot fire out of your hand. And because of the simplicity of the mechanics of that game, allows the developers to create a bunch of unique situations to use that simple mechanic. So because of that, you have all these interesting made stages. No stage truly feels like another stage. Like they can offer maybe the later Mario titles more, but they can offer something new and unique to that. And just because the mechanics are built so simply and so effectively, they can do things like that. If you make like a really overly complex type of game, it's a lot harder to make more unique conditions that don't feel like artificial or anything like that. So going back to Dragon Quest, because the combat system is so simple and straightforward, there's a lot of different situations that you can put yourself in that each boss fight doesn't necessarily feel like the previous one.
Yeah. I mean, all in all, it's really well built. It's just really well executed. One thing I really appreciate about Dragon Quest games in general, which I found in this game also, was how well balanced the party or the mechanics of the battle are. So a lot of times in RPGs, like you can do buffs and debuffs and that sort of thing, and it'll make things easier, more difficult, etc. But you don't really have to get involved in that stuff. You can just, hack and slash your way through a battle. But that's not really the case here with Dragon Quest 11. Like a lot of battles, you have to rely on like all your entire skill set to get through it. And they don't you can level up, but you're not gaining like It's not like by the end of the game you're doing 9,999 damage and you have 9,999 HP. Like you're only gaining like marginal stat boosts every time you level up. So it's not like you can just level yourself through everything. Usually, you have to use your entire skill set to kind of buff up your party, debuff the boss, use the appropriate attacks. Equip the proper equipment. You don't want to just buy the most expensive thing on the block, because a lot of times something that doesn't boost your defense as high, it might have some other thing, like it protects you from being paralyzed, which is something the boss does routinely, which
not to mention it's better to craft overall.
Yeah, well, that too. And the crafting system in this game I didn't really get into until later in the game, and then I ended up crafting a ton. I got really, I would say, good at it, but it's kind of got like a slot machine addictive quality to it. I know it's a lot of it's RNG, but it makes me feel like I'm like actually have some skill set with it, because I've gotten my own methodical way of crafting stuff out to perfection. But I really like the crafting in this game. You can boost and kind of enhance almost any piece of equipment you have. You can obviously pick up various materials and craft other pieces of armor and weapons, etc. So all in all, it's got a lot for you to dive into.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'll probably say it in next week's episode also. If I had to pick my personal game of the year, it's this, easily. I have not sunk more hours into a game than this game.
Yeah, if you pick this game up, $60, you'll definitely get your full money's worth. I mean, this game does not want to end. It'll just keep going on and on and on, and it's a good reason. I mean, that's a good thing in this game.
Never gets boring, at least for me.
Yeah. So all around a really good experience. Like I said, there's going to be some minor things you might want to just prepare yourself mentally for. The music might be a little jarring at first, but you get used to it, and the difficulty might be a little easy at first, but you'll get to where you want to be later in the game. So all in all, very much a net positive for me. Really good buy. So
yeah, I mean, for the non-spoiler, 100% recommend it. It's worth every penny. Whether you play on the PS4 version or PC, both are equally viable options. If you truly want to wait, there will be a Switch version eventually coming out. We don't know when, but there will eventually be a Switch version coming out. So if you truly want to wait for a portable experience, there is that. If you know Japanese or willing to deal with translating it yourself, which would be a pretty heavy task for a game like this, there is the 3DS version, which is essentially the same game, but downscaled to a 3DS. It's not just like a port of the game. It is its own game, but it's like the same world, the same characters, the same dialogue, but it was built for an engine for the 3DS.
I'm sure eventually, if they're not going to port that version, I'm sure eventually we'll get like a fan translation or something online, and I'm really interested in playing.
That would be a monumental task, but I mean, it's possible, but it would take forever. Like I wouldn't expect years for someone to pull that off. Well,
I mean, I would assume there'd be like a collection of people that would work on it together, but if there is,
the Mother 3.
Yeah, if there was a project of that sort and there was a version of that game released, I'd be very interested in playing that version to see how it plays. Because
me too.
But anyways, so again, next week we're gonna have like our full spoiler version of this discussion, in which we're gonna kind of get into the story and like anything you can consider to be a spoiler we'll talk about. So let us know your comments about what you think about the game, and we'll definitely kind of take that into account next week. And do you have anything else you want to bring up with this game before we close it out?
No. The only thing left I have to say is spoilerific. So next week.
Yeah. For sure. So thanks for listening this week. Keep in mind, we do have an audio-only version. There'll be a link in the description of this video. And if you're listening to the audio version, check out our YouTube page, subscribe. We really appreciate it. But other than that, we'll catch you all next week. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Take care.